Good afternoon, everybody. Today I wanted to look at an upcoming minor fast, which is the 17th of Tamuz. This is one of our minor fast days in the Jewish calendar. Now, it begins next Thursday morning, and it is a day which marks 5 different tragedies. I want to go over those 5 tragedies and explain kind of the significance of these particular tragedies, and then also look at a fun fact about the 17th of Tammuz. So first of all, what's the difference between a minor fast and one of our larger fasts? A minor fast means that we don't eat or drink from sunrise until sunset. Unlike the 2 major fasts in the Jewish calendar, which is Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. Those are just about 25-hour fasts from sundown until sundown. This one's only from sunrise until sundown. What are the 5 tragedies that we mark on the 17th of Tammuz? Let's go over them. The first is, this is when Moses was said to smash the 10 commandments. If you remember, when Moses goes up to receive the 10 commandments from God in the Torah, he gets a report from God that the Israelites have rebelled by creating a golden calf. And God says, go down and take care of this, essentially. So Moses goes down, he sees this idol, and smashes the 10 commandments. The smashing of those 10 commandments, it isn't the end of the story. He makes new ones, albeit they're not as great as the first ones. The first ones were carved by God, God's self. These next ones are going to be written by Moses, engraved in the stones by Moses. So it's not the end, of the story. It's tragic, but it's only one part in a bigger tragedy, which is tied in with the golden calf, which is tied in with the Israelites rebelling against God in general. The second tragedy we mark is, we're told that there were idols that were put in the temple in Jerusalem. Now, we don't know exactly which idols we're referring to. It could be during the Greek rule around the time of the Maccabees that an idol was placed in the sanctuary, in the Holy of Holies in Jerusalem, in place of the altar there. And so the altar was defiled, and it's possible that was the time that an idol was placed there. We don't know exactly which idol we're referring to, which time period, which temple, first or second, but we do know that, again, this is similar to the smashing of the 10 commandments in that it's tragic. It's part of, a problem of, that's going to kind of blossom of the way idolatry affects the Israelites. It's not the destruction of the temple, but it's a defiling of it, and it's an expression of that other gods belong to this temple and not our God. So again, similar to the smashing of the 10 commandments, not the end of the story, but certainly tragic, and part of a bigger problem. The third tragedy, so we're on number 3 now out of 5, is that during the first temple, when Jerusalem was besieged by the Babylonians, this was in the 6th century, we are told that they ran out of sheep to do the daily sacrifices. Since the time that the temple um, was established by Solomon. The daily sacrifices had been occurring, twice a day. That's the reason we say our morning and afternoon Amidah, by the way, is, because we're commanded in the Torah to offer a sacrifice in the morning and a sacrifice in the afternoon. We don't have sacrifices anymore. In place of our sacrifices, we pray. But back when there were animal sacrifices, it was a really big deal when they ran out of animals because of the siege. So, again, similar to the last two tragedies, certainly tragic. I mean, it must have been a horrible day when they realized they could not do the daily sacrifice. But again, they still had the altar, the city was still standing, the temple was still standing. It was part of a bigger problem, but not, in and of itself, the most tragic that it could be. The fourth is we're told that there was a Torah scroll that was burned on this day. We don't know if this was during the Roman period, if this was during the Greek period, but let's assume it was the Roman period. Here, if you remember, the Roman persecution of the Jews, which led to what I'm going to get to in a moment, which is the major siege and breaking of the walls and destruction of the temple. The burning of this Torah scroll was one piece in a bigger problem, which a bigger problem of persecution. It's tragic. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen a Torah scroll even fall on the ground. Remember, if a Torah scroll falls on the ground, we're supposed to fast for 40 days, not days and nights, but during the daylight hours. We're not supposed to eat or drink. When a Torah scroll is burned, we're told that the letters fly up in the air, back to God, in the same way that when a person dies, their soul returns to God too. A Torah has a soul too. Here, it's part of a bigger issue of persecution, an expression of complete disrespect and disregard for everything that we hold dear in our tradition. And it's number 4 out of the 5 tragedies of the 17th of Tammuz. The last one is, the one that gets the most press because it's the one that's, it's the one that's the most well known for this day, which is this is the day that the walls of Jerusalem were breached. There are 3 fasts in conjunction with the destruction of the temple. This is the second one. The first one is the 10th of Tammuz. That's when the Romans put a siege around Jerusalem. The second one, this one, is the 10th of Tevet is the first one, when the Romans put a siege around Jerusalem. This is the second one, the 17th of Tammuz, when those walls around the city protecting it were broken. And then this leads 3 weeks later to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the day that the temple was destroyed. This moment that the walls were breached was one where any Jew in Jerusalem must have known that the end was coming. That is to say that the city would be destroyed, that the temple would be destroyed. It had not happened yet. But this was the first moment that it became clear that there was no hope. To me, that's what this minor fast represents. It's a day where we acknowledge that it's not just the major tragedies that we have to mourn. It's the little moments, the minor tragedies that lead up to those bigger, to those bigger tragedies. We mark on the 10th of Tevet, the siege of Jerusalem, we mark the day that the walls were broken as a reminder to us that if we forget that major tragedies are made up of little steps, then we'll never be able to stop them. If we didn't mourn the fact that we ran out of sheep for the daily sacrifice, then we wouldn't know that that in itself would cause a bigger problem. If we didn't mourn the day that the Ten Commandments were smashed, then we might think that a bigger problem was, was the general rebelliousness of the Israelites, and that was the problem to be addressed. If we didn't mark the day that this Torah scroll was burnt, then we might have forgotten entirely that those little issues, those little problems actually, lead to bigger ones. An example which is tragic, that's worth sharing is that school shootings are usually not isolated events. There's tragedies that lead up to it. There's bullying and all kinds of little pieces that, if we just pay attention, could be stopped. Here, this is what these minor fasts mean to me. And the 17th of Tammuz is a reminder to us that these little tragedies lead to these bigger ones, and if we don't mark them, if we just ignore them, then we'll never be able, to stop anything bigger. Now, I want to share just one more interesting thing about the 17th of Tammuz, and it starts in the book of Zechariah. Zechariah is one of our minor prophets. I'm looking at it in my Tanakh. You can follow along too. If you have a JPS Tanakh, I'm on page 1393. Zechariah has a prophecy, and it goes like this. He says, "The word of the Lord of hosts came to me, saying, Thus said the Lord of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, the fast of the 5th month, the fast of the 7th month, and the fast of the 10th month shall become occasions for joy and gladness. Happy festivals for the house of Judah, but you must love honesty and integrity." So Zechariah has a prophecy. He says our 4 minor fasts, and there's a 5th one too that he doesn't mention here because it was before his time, which is the fast of Esther. But in Zechariah's time, there were 4 minor fasts. There was the 17th of Tammuz. Not 4 minor fasts, 4 communal fasts. There was the 17th of Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, the 10th of Tevet, and Tzom Gedalia, the fast of Gedalia. And he says those 4 fasts someday will be occasions for joy and gladness. It's kind of a cryptic prophecy. How could it be that our fast days, the days that mark the biggest tragedies of our people, could be days of joy and gladness? In the Talmud, there's a debate. Maybe he means to say in times of peace, when there's no persecution, we'll look back on these. And we'll be glad now, living in a time of peace, knowing what our past was. More or less, that's what how the our rabbis in the Talmud understand this. Perhaps it is in the kind of way that when we look back on something, if you look back at an illness or you look back at a moment of tragedy in our own lives, sometimes in retrospect we see a bigger picture, and we can find blessing in it, possibly. But I want to share a more concrete connection with the 17th of Tammuz, which has to do with America. July 4th, 1776, Independence Day, actually occurred on the 17th of Tammuz. Our minor fast day was the day where America was established. Now, America is not perfect, obviously, but as a country, it's been more welcoming to the Jews than any other one in history. And when I think about the 17th of Tammuz, it's complicated because it really is a day for celebrating, the independence of this country, that has been so welcoming to Jews. Albeit there's, as I mentioned, there's still issues, and today, we still see anti-Semitism here. But compared to the pogroms and the levels of physical persecution, that we dealt with as a people, for generations across the world, expulsions, um, oppression, and Holocaust, America's been, quite a welcoming country for us. And the 17th of Tammuz marks American Independence Day. Every now and then, July 4th falls on the 17th of Tammuz. The next time is going to be in 2034. So mark your calendars now. But it's worth mentioning that, Zechariah had this prophecy that these days will become days of gladness and festival for us. Maybe this was part of his prophecy too. So with that, I just wanted to offer you kind of a thorough look at what this minor fast day is. Next Thursday from sunrise until sunset, we won't eat in commemoration of those 5 tragedies: Moses smashing the tablets, and idol set up at the altar in Jerusalem, running out of sheep, not being able to do the daily sacrifice during the Babylonian siege in the 6th century in the First Temple, a Torah being burnt publicly during the Roman era, and finally, and most significantly, the breaking of the wall in Jerusalem, leading to the destruction of the temple on Tisha B'Av. So with that, I invite you, if you want, you're welcome to message me any questions, and I wish you a good rest of your day, and a meaningful and easy fast next Thursday. Okay, thank you, everybody. I will see you on Saturday night for our Hasidut class. Okay, so long.